Oh God. Da, 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 da. Ah, there. Right. So, as you can see, a load of rubbish. Now, I hadn't appreciated this before because I was sitting at the back of the room when it was auctioned, but it looks very much as though this has been a graft. So this is obviously some type of genetic dwarf pine. There you can see a disparity, a difference between this bark quality and that. Okay, so that's the rooting stock, and this would have been the scion, which had been grafted when the tree from a little shoot, not much bigger than that. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of all of these rubbish branches the whole way up and see whether it's going to be possible to do something with just this top. That's probably a bit of wishful thinking there, but you never know. You never know. Okay, so, right. I'm going to shift this to my workspace. Well, as you can see, I've already chopped off a number of branches, these spoke wheel branches, and one or two of these others. I will probably take this one off as well. Um, I'm not 100% sure which of the. First of all, let's get rid of the definite no-nos. So I will take that off. Boom. And what have we got here? Some of these hefty things. If you can have a look in here, you see these little things emerge from that, and there's a variation in the thickness, which is good. Whereas if I take that one there, it's very heavy and very similar in thickness. So I'm going to take this one out. That one's come out, and I'm going to look at what we've got here. Similar sort of thing there. So we will take this one out there. Oh, by the way, I've already removed a lot of these. Where you see you've got these three things, take that central one out, okay? And there's still a cluster, so we'll get rid of that one as well. And ideally just leave the two. We don't want this one here, so what I'm going to do is I'll take them right back, just leaving a few needles. As you can see here, there's the beginnings of quite an interesting natural line. So what do we do with the drunken sailor? Right. Ta-da. Now you see this chappy up here, sticking straight up. You're no good to anybody. So I'm going to get rid of that, but I'm going to get rid of it by moving this one first. There. um, don't want it. It's got to go. If you've got to go, it's got to go. Boom. Right, now what's all this nonsense? So this, I'm going to have to bend this somehow. Yeah, I'm going to work with this one here. There's too much going on there. I don't want this. I don't want that one, so let's get shot of this. Boom. Now you can see we are lightening, reducing the actual visual weight of the foliage density to begin to balance off a little bit better with the weight of the trunk. The weight of the trunk is very linear and light, so we're going to have to do that. Another way, of course, is we will have to pull out all of the downward pointing needles, but that's something I will do a little bit more of later in this demo. The reason why I'm pulling out these lower needles is because when you see this like that, with the needles pointing up, and eventually the branches will all be wide and they will look much better and much more mature, as you'll see in hopefully in the finished design, as opposed to the bushiness of needles all pointing downwards. Okay, not the easiest of things to explain. It's easier when I actually do it and you can see the result. So now up there, then and up there, and I'll just leave a little bit of this, I think. Let's get rid of that one there, and this is too low. Is it? Yeah, I think so. We'll rub out these little things from get a better idea what we've got. Right, it's very, very straight, isn't it? So, okay. Now, what have we got? This, and this. Right, you see here again, we've got this one. I'm going to take this out. Hope this is going to be okay. Yeah, let's get rid of that. All right. So we're keeping the smaller stuff, all these smaller things. Yes, as I said right at the beginning, with literati design, it's very, very difficult to be, to pre-plan exactly how you're going to create the design. It's a very spontaneous um, style where it just results from a sort of speed thing. Now you see how I have reduced the volume. I mean, compare this little shoot here with this kind of thing. You see the mass of this, and so much of it is because of all this stuff underneath. And this is all redundant. This is all distracting. We don't want any of this downward pointing things. Let's get shot of it all. Incidentally, another thing too to bear in mind, when you're pulling these things, pull them in this direction. Don't rip them back, okay? Because if you rip them back, you can tear into the bark. So pull them in the direction of growth. All these old needles, ideally. So again, when one is doing this initial part of the design, it is basically just a creation of the primary structure of the tree, the skeleton, okay? And in time, you build up the body. So initially, I'm just concerned with getting the major lines. Now, let me just see, where are we at? Where am I? Am I going to keep this? Yeah, I'll keep this for the time being. Okay. Right. I don't want this.
Tell us what you're thinking, Johnny. Show us how you're bending it.
I'm just bending this just to see. No, I'm not going to have this, otherwise there's going to be a problem. So this is the duality. What I am going to do, though, I'm going to just cut this off up here and see later whether I can leave just one chin. These things I won't clean up now because they're going to be too time consuming, but I will clean this one. And then I want to show you how I can bend this down to reflect what I'm hoping to do with that up there. Right, now let's look at these things branch by branch. That one is okay, but you see there's a line coming down there, so out, out. This is when we start getting a little bit more into detail. All these downward ones. You see, well, I don't know what I mentioned earlier, but with lines, straight away you have direction. So it's pointing out in that direction, out in that direction. But if you take all these different little points at the top and link them, you have a nice little curve. All right. And then when you look, and that's nice, and I can use this in the design. There are still one or two more little things in here that I have to take out. Can't get my fingers in, so I'll cut them out. There we go. Right. That's going to be a nice, usable little branch. Right, this is going to be the tricky guy. This great straight thing, I'm going to have to do something with that. Now, I'm going to see, is this necessary? This guy at the back here? Probably not. Probably not. So, first of all, before I take it off, let's get a shot of this guy. All right. And then we'll just thin these out. First of all, take all the last year's ones out. Then we'll take some of these ones out. Problem, of course, with doing this, you get the resin on your fingers and it's really sticky. So, okay, so now we'll move around. Let me just get rid of this little chap. There, we'll move around. And you see the difference between this and this. So we have to balance it all off. So much of bonsai is dependent on balance, getting things, all of the elements within the design to balance without creating lopsidedness. So I'll move this out of the way so I can see what's here. I'll take a few of these downward ones out. That'll probably be pointed right up. Move that one out of the way. See what we've got here. Still a lot of downward pointed needles. Look back here, get rid of some of these old ones. By removing these older needles, it's also going to make life a lot easier with the wiring. What we haven't done, and I should have mentioned this right at the start, was talk about the front of the tree. And I can remember in America when I was doing a design at the same time with Kimura-san, the famous Japanese bonsai master. We were in Washington, and I was working on a pine, and the people kept coming up saying, "Dan, where's the front of the tree? Where's the front of the tree?" So, you can answer this once or twice, but I got so frustrated in the end. I turned the box round, and with my felt pen, I wrote on the back here, "The front of the tree is behind its back." So if you establish where the back of the tree is, you know where the front is. It's on the other side. Right, so we're getting there. That's nice, 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 nice. Now that one's going to be a problem, isn't it? But if I take that out, there, we haven't got that much weight now, have we? All right, I'm just going to take out a few more branches, but what I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about the front of the tree and explaining that it's on the other side of the back. The front of the tree, well, to be honest with you, I don't like using that term front. of the tree. I prefer to say the preferred viewing side. Okay, and I think that's important. We all have our preferences, and there are many different ways of establishing which you take as the most important aspect within the design. Some people like the roots. Okay, we've got roots that are visible, not necessarily beautiful, but they're visible and they're fairly superficial. They're up on the surface. We have this terribly unfortunate disparity between the thickness of this rootstock that the scion, the original scion, was grafted onto. So that's swelling at a greater rate than this bit down here, and there's precious little I can do about that. That's how it goes, all right? Because this was obviously never intended to be a bonsai. It was intended to be a dwarf conifer within a garden environment. Okay, so I said I was going to show you how to bend this later, make sense of it. Although I'm not sure that I'll necessarily keep it in the final design. Right, so coming back to here, we were talking about these two branches. Do I really need that one there?
What are you thinking? What's your thought process as you do what you're doing there?
How I'm going to be able to create the foliage cloud that I'm after, or clouds. Also, a question of the weight. You know, with literati, as I said earlier, it's very difficult to be specific in how you're going to create the design from the start. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's just a quick squiggle. And the way I like to describe the design is it's like a quiet stroll into the clouds. Okay, so here we are taking our walk up and into the clouds. And that for me is the essence of literati. So coming back here, we've got this long one and we've got this shorter one. The shorter one, in a sense, has similar character to these, whereas the longer one hasn't. I think probably if you view these spaces in between as well, that would be better. If I was to take this out, this is going to be a problem. So I'm going to take this out. Let's come back to where I perceive the front to be, which was probably around here somewhere. And incidentally, another thing that I mentioned, that with most informal designs, whether it's an informal upright, slanting style, all these designs, ideally the crown of the tree, and I use the word crown as opposed to apex, because crown suggests maturity, apex, which is pointed, suggests juvenility and growth. And with bonsai, we're always trying to reconstruct or simulate the mature ancient image. Okay, so crown. You also have root crown, which is this bit here. But the root crown is usually this bit where the roots form the buttress at the base. What I used to do in my early days of bonsai, I used to recommend, thumping this. I'm not going to do it now. As you can see, it's very vulnerable. Well, the thinking I had was that if you bash it enough and damage the underlying cambium structure, as it repairs itself, if you haven't killed the darn thing, as it repairs itself, it will swell. And in that way, you can get, you can get it to swell up and hopefully marry up with the thickness of that. But I'm not going to do it any more than I have done. Right, so coming back here, I'll leave this for the moment because it's a nice branch. Got all of these. Have we cleaned all of these up? Still a few Still a few to take out. First of all, before I decide to take this out, if I'm going to, let's just take out these older needles.
What caught your eye when you said "oh" like that?
This thing here, we were talking about taking one of them out, wasn't I? That's, yes, whether to take this one out or take that one out. And I decided that we'd take this out. On the other hand, this is so much more flexible. No, I think actually, in thinking again, I think I will probably prefer to keep this one because it's so much more flexible, as I said, and therefore much easier. It would be much easier for me to position into wherever it is I want to position it. Right, this candle's a bit too long, so I'm going to just pinch that back there, just leaving a few of the rudimentary needles. Likewise with this one, pinch that back there. Okay, I've already done it with those. So now you see how much lighter this is, and how by doing that, it's so much more in balance with the rest of this linear form. This is going to be a pig to bend. I hope I'll be able to bend it, but even then there are techniques that I could try to apply. Now let's have a look at this and how much of it are we going to keep. Well, we don't want that for a start. This branch here, we've got these little chaps there, so let's get shut of that. Now, as before, we look at all of these things. We've got 3 branches here. 1, 2, 3. First of all, before I take any decisions as to which has to come out, let's just clean them up, give ourselves a better idea of what's what. Right, so the next thing I'm going to have to do is check out some of these here to see indeed whether I want to keep it or not. Well, I'll keep it. Right, so we move on. This lot here, I think, has now more or less all been resolved as far as I want to take it. Most of it is done. Still just 1 or 2 oddballs. Okay. Take this back a little. Oh, there's 3. 1, 2, 3. So we'll take that central one out. Leave the smaller ones, which will be in better proportion. We'll take that out. I'll break this one down a bit. Take that out. Right, now I'm going to move over. Incidentally, just take a look at all this that we've cut off. Can you ever believe that all of this was part of this tree? You better believe it, because it was. Right, so I'm going to come back to this lot here and take a load of these out. These old needles, previous year's needles. It looks like a very vigorous tree. Let's thin that out quite a lot. Now onto this one here, and there, and there, and there, there. Right, that little chappy down there. Now let's see, got this one here. Take these out on last year's growth again. this tree will it'll be quite interesting, and it'll have that nice lightness in its design that is pretty essential for literati style. Which it needs that lyricism. It's a living poem in a sense. Yes, that's a nice description. It's a living poem. Now, don't need this too heavy. So take it off. Ta-da! So I'll be wiring it all very, very soon. But of course, I won't subject you to having to witness all of that because it can be very boring. I'll do a few wires initially, and then when the wiring is finished, we'll get back to it, and I will do the tweaking. What do I mean by that? I mean the arranging of the branches where I want them in order to produce the final result that I'm after, which I still am not sure about because you can't be with literati. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think I've done as much needle pinching as I want. So what I'm going to do now is some wiring. Now, first of all, where's our front? I think this is quite interesting around here. Yeah, I think so. A bit sort of 3/4, something like this. But before we do that, let's see whether there's any possibility of cleaning this thing up here. Okay, let's get this tool and we will just take some of this off. I almost certainly will be getting rid of this branch, but I just want to show you how I can bend it. Remember what I said earlier about never leaving a gin chopped off like that. Always break it up a bit so it actually looks as though it was a broken branch and not a pruned branch. Okay. Right, that'll do. That's better. We still have this tiny little bit at the end here, which we have to eliminate. Well, I can do that by burning it out in a minute. All right. That'll do. That'll do. Okay, so now I'm just going to get myself a blowtorch. So what I'm going to do now is heat this up. What happened was many years ago, I had a fairly heavily ginned branch and it had a lot of sort of whiskers like this all over it. And I've got a blowtorch to bend to burn off those little whiskers. And then I suddenly felt, as I was holding the branch and I was burning these things off, I suddenly felt it go a bit limp. And I thought, aha, I can do something with that. And that was how the technique was born, and it's now being used all over. So what I'm going to do now, having bent that top part up, down, I'm going to just make this a little bit more interesting by bending this bit up. I'll just leave that there. Turn this off, and by blowing it in this way, I'm setting it. Okay, if I didn't, it would just bounce back. Okay, so you can see we've got a little bit of life and movement into that. Now what I want to do is just tidy up this little bit here. Okay. So I'll just burn these whiskers off here and dull down this tip. It never burns particularly well when you're creating a gin from a branch that was alive. And that reason for that is because the resin in the branch is almost like a fire retardant. It doesn't want to burn. You know, this is to protect it in forest fire situations. But on the other hand, if you have a dry, dead branch, okay, with all its dried resin in it, my God, you put a blowtorch to that, and it really does burn. It burns very quickly. Anyway, I just thought I'd do that and leave that there for the time being. You see how we get this ping pong situation once you start cleaning these stuff. So I'm going to take all of those things off. Whether I leave this on is doubtful. I don't think I doubt if I will. I'll just clean some of this stuff off. But it's quite an interesting little technique, and it's amazing how you can do this. What you must never do, for instance, I'm going to have troubles in a moment bending this heavy branch up here, but you can't go using a blowtorch on a living branch with bark and all that on it. You'll just kill it. Okay, pretty obvious. So what I'm going to do now is create an anchor and try to bend this branch, which is actually very, very stiff. Okay, I'm just flexing it a bit. I don't think I will be able to, but I'll try. So get some wire, some of this wire here. Okay, and we cut that. Right. So now, just put that there. Okay, and I'll just bring this around and around, do this around there. And always make sure that the end of your wire is turning upwards. Okay, and not down. Right, so this will go around here.
State the obvious, explain why.
Because you can have better control when positioning the branch. If it was pointing downwards, you can't get the end of the branch to go up if you needed it to, and in most cases you do. So we'll put this around here. This is pretty stiff wire. I think this is a 3.5 millimeter gauge. Okay, so we'll take this around here and around there and just up there. All right, and now just nip that last bit off. That's a bit of a sort from there. Take that off. All right. I'm going to attempt to bend that, but I don't think this wire is going to be strong enough. So I'm going to double up and put another bit there on it. Okay. It's really only this part here that needs it, but we will go all the way. So that there, follow the same line. When you use two wires, it's always, whoops. Always make sure that you can maintain them in close tandem. Okay. Just turn that up. Right. So that they are going to, the two will work as one. So you place the wire on first of all. This is a pretty heavy wire for this branch. It's always better to have it that way than wire that's not thick enough and then doesn't do the job. So that's up. So we'll just tidy that little bit there. Cut it. Right. Now I'm going to try to bend this. Right. This branch is really tough, okay? You can see how I've wired it. It's quite a neat little bit of wiring. So I've got two different devices here that I could use. I've got this thing here, which you can stick underneath there. I can use this to bend the branch, okay, but I'm not going to bend it.
You just need to do things slowly so I can actually catch up and see something.
So that's one thing. And then I also have this device, which my engineering friend made especially for me, which you can use to bend the branches, and by adjusting the width, I can put that in there and just twist it like so, okay? So I'm probably using that to do it, but what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to make life a little bit easier, and I'm going to get this tool, this rather bizarre, weird tool, and place it in there and see if I can't just split through a bit. All right, so I've done that, and that should now make it that little bit easier. See this strange tool? Don't get many of these around. There you go back. All of this stuff, all this heavyweight stuff goes back to the good old days when I was into my big bonsai stuff. So I'll place this one here because this is where the bend is going to be at this point there, underneath the point where I want it bent, and now we will try to bend it. Up a bit.
How do you know how far you can go before you go to break?
You hear the snap. I'm bouncing it. The reason I'm doing this is to wound the underlying vascular bundles, so as they repair, they'll be more inclined. Now you see we've got some kind of bend in it. That was going up a moment ago. That's coming down. Now I can also apply a tourniquet to this and tie it down to one of these things. So that is what I'm going to do. But first of all, let me just check. We were talking about the front as being around here somewhere. I still want to bend it a bit more. Can I do it now? That's not bad. That's not bad. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is to strap it down as well. All right. So for that, we'll get a thinner piece of wire. I will. I'm going to have to attach it over here, but I don't want it to scar. So I'm going to put something over there. Okay, get a bit of this. Get some scissors, and let's just wrap this around there and around there. This is what plasterers use to seal the gaps between the plaster boards. All right, so that's not bad. That's quite neat, and it's self-adhesive. So that done, let's get a bit of wire on there, and we will tie it around this branch here. Okay, and what I'm going to do, oh, it's tricky. Let's just start that off. Push that on there. Okay, now let me get my pliers. I'll pull this down a bit more. Just come on. Don't be bad. Push it down. That's all right for the moment. I'll tidy that up. We'll push this out of the way. Push this out of the way. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, just get another little piece of wire of the thick sort. Here. Just cut a little piece of that. We'll go into this. And we will twist it. Twist it. Twist it. Having done that branch, I can, if I wish, tighten that up even further. But what I should mention at this point is that I'm doing this demonstration for the sake of a demonstration, but it's not really a clever thing to wire at this time of the year, in sort of spring, because you're coming into the growing season. All these little shoots are all going to grow, and as they grow, branches swell, and that can cause the wire to bite into the branches, which can leave some unattractive scars subsequently. So I will have to be rather careful about that and keep an eye on what's going on and remove the wires as soon as that happens. Normally, it would be much more sensible to wire a tree sort of Septemberish time as a tree is beginning to come into dormancy, um, and the branches will remain the same thickness, without that problem. So I'm going to now wire this branch here, and it's always sensible to wire two branches. So it's this one here, okay, and the branch on this side, and this one here, okay. So by doing it this way, the branches are really well anchored. All right. So turn that up. We'll cut that. All right. Now I'll come back to this side. Wire this. Ideally, the wire angle should be approximately 45 degrees, okay? If it's wider than that, it's not going to have the strength to hold the branch in position. If it's narrower than that, it's going to be more inclined to be like a spring. Okay, so the 45-degree is the sensible thing. Right, so now what I'm going to do is wire these two, and then I think after these two branches are done, I'll continue the process with the remaining branches, and you'll be able to see how it goes. So I will carry on with all of these branches, and hopefully we'll get the job done. Trim that back. Again, you see the wires coming upwards. Carry this one on. Notice how I've got a nice long wire. By doing it this way, you get far less wastage. If you try to pre-measure a wire, invariably it's either too long or too short, and you cut bits off the end, long bits, or it's not long enough and you're cusp blind. So I like to start off with a long length. I learned this little gag from a good friend, the late John Narker. Right, so up, up, and away. I'm just doing this last branch. Okay. Ooh. Wow. Okay. Now this one go around here, around here, around here. And that one goes in there, and around here, and around there, and around there, and around there. Okay, I think that's probably enough.
Is there a way that you decide which gauge of wire you're going to use?
Yeah, by feeling the branch usually. Yes.
Start that off with the explaining.
Well, I tend to feel the branch to see more or less what sort of tension it has to decide on my choice of wire thickness. But if you're going to if you're going to make the wrong choice, choose a slightly heavier wire, okay? There's nothing more frustrating than using a wire that's too thin and you bend it and it bounces back up. Right, well, this thing's been tied down. I have actually just positioned one or two of these branches. So now what I'm going to do is bring this round a bit over here to make this round there. Take that round to there. This one can come around there. This one can come around there. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm trying to build a pad up here. Right, I'm just going to tie those two branches together. Probably, yeah, I think I'll just probably do with a bit of this stuff again. A bit more of this off. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie this around here to there. Ta-da. Okay, I want to bring that branch there to almost make it look like right. Okay. Now you see how I've filled the gap a bit. I'm just building. I haven't got a bit of wire on that one. Oh, it doesn't matter. This can come around there. Now this one here, we will bend around there, back out there, down a bit, and up, just to continue that roundness. It's still a bit high, so we take those down a wee bit. Down a wee bit. So we go up and down. Not too bad. I'm just going to cut one or two of these downward pointing needles. Okay, now you see that? It's not too bad, huh? Here we go. Right, now let's try to relate this to that. I don't know whether this wire here that I put on is going to be big enough. If I bring this around there. Now that hasn't been wired. Bad boy, Barton. Bad boy. That is not clever. So let's get a bit of wire. This here wants to go up to there. Now if I bring this around there, around there, up, come around there, and around here, and I've committed the grievous sin here. These wires will cross, which is never good practice, and I will be criticized for it by somebody or other. Too bad. Can't be helped. It happens sometimes. So far it's the only one that's crossed. Ta-da! Right. Then this one is going to go. The thing about wiring is, if you're going to wire, you've got to wire everything, because you can't be half-baked about it. Do one or two branches and not all of them, because what happens when you start placing your branches where you want them, the ones that haven't been wired stick out like sore thumbs. So if you want to be in control of the beast, you've got to do the lot. Right, just this one silly little branch left. Oh, golly, golly, gumdrops. Put that there. Just put them around there to anchor. All right, take them around and up. Okay, and then this one goes around here. Ta-da! There you go. Now, there's this chappy. Oh, so, God, I nearly said it. Stuff it. I won't bother with that one. Let me just see.
Just said you've got to do them all. You have to follow through on what we just told you.
Well, I think that's probably going to be okay. I'm going to have to now relate this to this and the rest of the tree. So this is to somehow go up around there. Now, see that? That's a nice enclosed, held space. Space is terribly important. It's not just about the form. And if you have space, make sure that it's in your control. It's held space. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and it's gripping it. You don't want that. That's an escaping space. Okay, so that's how it is. Right, so this is there. So now I've got to bring that around there a bit. Take this around there. I hope. What's happened here? It's come undone. That was okay. That one can go up there. Now this is going to be a tricky chippy. How do I bend that? How do I bend that? Let's try this technique. Not very much. This one, I'm going to take it around, put them there, up there.
How often when you do this does the bark crack and break?
With pines, not so much, because it's the you know, the bark is pretty flexible with most conifers, so it doesn't crack, and if it does, it's going to repair itself anyway. So now I'm going to take this one around, if I can. There you go. Just bring that there, that one there. Lift that a little bit up more. A little bit of a crown around. This can come off. I think you don't need that. That's redundant. There's a wire cutter. This is just... Now, what am I going to do with this chappy? Do I need it? I could get away without it, but I think I'll just play around and see. Whoa. Come on, bend, bend, bend. Yeah, that's better, as they say. I think that's more or less it. Now, I'll just take this lot, put it away. I'm going to return the tree to the plain background, but before I do so, I think I'll just remove one or two more of these things here. Now, this is a little detail. You see those tiny little lines there, okay? When you cut branches off, don't cut into those. That's going too far. Cut just in front of. Then that will heal over. If you cut into it, you're not going to get that. Right, leaving these things just for the time being. Leave that just for the time being. Yeah, some one or two ugly things, but as you can see, it's really just something from nothing. Right, okay, I'm going to shift it over to the other side. Right. And here we can see just a little bit. That's quite interesting. So obviously, this is going to have to go into a round pot because it can be viewed from so many sides. I see the front as something like that. Okay, coming towards you. It's quite attractive. It's nothing really that special, but it was just really an attempt to create something from nothing. Where do we go from here? This is day one in the life of this particular piece of bonsai material as a literati pine. And I will develop these and they will become that little bit more dense in time. And it's a question then of pinching back and removing redundant, unwanted branches and just keeping the whole thing tight. But it's essential that it doesn't get overly, excuse me, overly heavy because it'll be top heavy. It'd be like a big lollipop. Okay, so I've always got to keep it light. I may in time remove other whole branches. You see, there's a little branch coming out here and there's this one here. I might remove the whole of this. Do you see that? That lightens it up and even take that away, leaving just this little bit. So these are options for the future and well, just a bit of fun. Something slightly different from what I used to do in the good old days when I used to do demos here, there, and everywhere. Um, Nowadays, I like to play around with the more insignificant, the the rubbish basically, and see whether anything can be done with it. Because half the time, most of the stuff when we start off with bonsai, it's mostly rubbish, and it's always a struggle. So what I'm trying to do here is to show how, with a bit of imagination and the courage to really get stuck in and be prepared to prune, then you can see you can get something. Right, so let's carry on for a moment with my bits and bobs. And you can see, ta-dum, look what we have cut off. Look what we have cut off. Ta-dum. And there's more. So, there you go. How about that for a nice design? It needs a very, very small pot. But obviously, you wouldn't do that at this stage. It would be far too dramatic. It's got to be done over a couple of seasons. It goes into smaller than this box, but larger than the final pot, so that it doesn't create too much of a trauma for the tree. We've got this thing here, which is too big. This is my Hiroshima pot, as I say, where pots were melted together in the sheer heat. So that's not suitable. So obviously, I'm going to have to make a bespoke pot for this tree, but there's no rush for that. As usual, if you've enjoyed this video, do remember to press the like button, subscribe, and share, and I'll really be happy.